brand new edition of the podcast, and today we're joined by an amazing guest today, founder of the Cheryl Claire Wellbeing, Cheryl Smith. How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. And thank you
Good.
for having me.
My pleasure. How's things been? Been okay?
Yeah, good, actually. Yeah, really good.
Good. How's your week been?
Yeah, very well. It's been quite busy, but behind the scenes kind of busy. I've just been plodding away with some work that is going to be coming out in January. So some exciting things that are happening behind the scenes.
Oh, brilliant. When did you start that? The organising for that?
Yeah, so I started working on it in the summer. So
Mm.
it's a long time coming. But yeah,
Wow.
it's going to be released in January.
That's amazing. Good luck with the whole release.
Thank you.
How you feeling quite nervous or excited, or how you feeling?
Yeah, a bit of both, to be honest. I think I'm at the point with it now where I just kind of feel like I've poured so much of myself into it. I
Yeah,
just kind of want to get it out there because it's been a bit of a love-hate project, but
really.
yeah, but yeah, there's a bit of nerves and definitely excitement about it. Yeah, because it is it's definitely something that I've really treasured. So, and
Yeah.
as I said, like I've poured so much into it that yeah, I can't wait to share it with everybody.
Oh, I bet. I mean, when you work on something like a project for how what's like kind of like average sort of length that you spend? Like, is it like a few months or a few weeks, or how long do you normally
Yeah, I'd
spend on
say
something?
yeah, a few months I would say. But this one's quite a big one, so
Yeah.
it's probably so been this has probably been like 6 months in the making. This one,
Wow.
so yeah, it's quite a big project. This one.
Yeah. I mean, when you tend to work with projects, do you tend to work by yourself mainly, or do you work with a team of people that you work with as well, or how does it normally
No, no,
work?
no. It's all me. It's everything is me. So I do everything. Yeah, all of it
Wow.
is just little on me.
Yeah, but see, that's why I admire you so much, because the work that you do at Cheryl Claire Wellbeing, honestly, is amazing. You do so much with that as well, though. Just looking at the things that you do for schools and young people and just young adults as well is incredible. I mean, you do so much, but which we'll get to in a minute, actually. But what I love to always ask all my guests on the podcast is how you've been in the last couple of years. So for you, how have you been coping? Have you been okay?
I would say that the last couple of years have kind of triggered me into building the business that I've set up. I was in I found the lockdown really hard.
Mm,
Um, and with my own personal circumstances, I fell apart a little bit. And
really?
it took the lockdown and um, a lot of therapy to build myself back up again.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, that's where Cheryl Claire Wellbeing's kind of come from, really.
Yeah,
Is
because I remember obviously reading up on about the work that you do. Obviously, you were a teacher for 12 years, weren't you, leading up to this
I
moment?
was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked in education for 12 years and yeah, I just got to a point where I was really struggling as a teacher to meet the demands of the job. I'd been signed off with stress and anxiety and depression. Um, but I just kept battling to go back because there was a lot of guilt, and I'm sure any teachers out there will kind of I can't think of the word relate to that
100%.
um, guilt that you can feel when you're off. Um,
Yeah.
So, and every time I was signed off, I just battled to go back. Um, and then, yeah, there was a significant sort of period where I was really not coping very well at all. And I ended up having a mental breakdown.
Wow.
And that was when I decided to leave. So I just thought my health is worth so much more than this job, and I just
Mm.
can't continue going the way that I was going. So I was signed off for quite a long period of time, and then I made the decision myself to just leave the education sector.
Yeah. But I completely agree with you that health is so important. It's more important than pretty much anything in life. And how far into the job do you feel like you needed therapy yourself to overcome any obstacles that you had in life? Was it soon after you left, or was it during your period of teaching as well? Was it in between?
So I did have some support whilst I was teaching, but um, in all honesty, I think the job was so all-consuming that I
Mm.
didn't really have a lot of time for myself. I didn't put myself first at all. Like, my job was always put before everything else in my life. So, and also I think I was a bit disillusioned as to how I could get better. Like, I didn't feel like I was bad enough to seek therapy. And I think that's commonplace as well, is this sort of misconception that you have to be a certain level in order to go and seek support. But actually, I probably needed it more then than when I left. But yeah, I during the long period of absence that I had due to my mental health, that's when I kind of sought external support and got some therapy.
I mean, was it someone, like, say, within the education system that you spoke to that helped you get therapy, or was it someone outside of school, or was it just a personal experience of your own?
It was just through my GP. My
Okay,
GP recommended that I had some talking therapy. So I went through a private route, and I found a therapist for myself. But yeah, unfortunately, the school where I was at wasn't particularly supportive in terms of mental health.
really?
Yeah, which was a shame. But so yeah, so the support that I gained was through my own workings, really.
Yeah. And I know obviously you became head of department for PE, didn't you, as well? Head of PE.
I was,
And
yeah, I was.
yeah,
That was my job, was head of PE.
yeah. And what, were you at the same school for 12 years, or was it at different schools in that period?
It was different schools in that
Oh,
period,
different
yeah.
schools. Yeah. How did you find being head of PE?
Um, I thought it was my dream job, and when I accepted that job, I kind of thought, right, I've made it. That's it.
Mm,
Like, this is where I want to be for the next amount of time. And then I was, I wanted to be an assistant head, and then I was always working towards something. I'm extremely ambitious. So yeah, the head of PE was always like my dream job. I always wanted, that was what I wanted to do. But unfortunately for me, I think it was a lot to do with the school situation, but there was just it was just an extremely hard role to fulfill. And it just seemed that no matter how many hours I put into the job, it just wasn't enough.
mm,
And I always felt that there was more to do, and that I wasn't being enough for that position.
mm,
And I think that also contributed to my decline of my mental health, was the fact that I just felt that I wasn't good enough, and that I wasn't doing enough, and that people were judging me and saying that I wasn't good enough. Although I had no evidence for that, but it's just, that's kind of what happens when your mental health declines. You kind of start believing those things.
of course.
But yeah, no, I think teaching in general just has its own level of stress and anxiety and pressure as well. But yeah, no, I did love it. I did love teaching, and I miss it. I miss
Mm.
being in front of the kids, but not necessarily all the politics that go with
Yeah, I
the
know
rest
all
of it.
about that as well, so don't worry. I've been in myself, but yeah. How did you get into teaching originally? Actually, was it, do you have like family that teaches as well? Or was it like any siblings or
No,
parents?
so I got into teaching originally because my PE teacher inspired me.
Wow.
She was a huge inspiration to me. I lost my dad when I was 15,
Oh, sorry to
and I went
hear.
through quite a difficult period, obviously, that age, and not really fully wanting to accept it, and just life in general was quite hard at 15 anyway, and then having to kind of cope with that. And my PE teacher became my mentor at school,
Mm,
and we just gained a really close relationship, and she was someone that I could turn to and I spoke to regularly. And yeah, I didn't know that that's what I wanted to do, but then because of the way that I kind of dealt with things with my dad, and I wasn't really supported that well. I was just really angry, so I I made some mistakes, as we all do in life, but I ended up being on like a part-time table, and I supported the PE department quite a lot. So I spent quite a lot of time with her, and I was just like, actually, I quite enjoy doing this. Like, I enjoy coaching the younger ones.
Mm.
And then from there, I kind of gained my CSLA and did my HSLA. And then during when I was choosing what I wanted to do for my GCSEs, I was like, right, I'm definitely doing PE. And then my A levels were all based around like what would be recommended for a teacher, and then yeah, it kind of just went from there really. But yeah, my own PE teacher was my inspiration for sure.
That's amazing. And talk about that's such a difficult time for you at 15. I mean, is that something that you discussed with your therapist as well, as saying what you went through in order to that got you here in the first place as well?
Yeah, 100%. And I think quite a lot of it was actually that was probably a part of my life that I hadn't dealt with. It was just and I think a lot of what my current issues were probably stemmed around not actually dealing with or being able to deal with what happened at 15.
Mm.
Because it was just kind of put in a box, and because I didn't really have a lot of therapy when at the time when it happened. And then from that point onwards, I kind of just threw myself into school, and then I threw myself into university, and I'd never really faced it.
Mm.
And then I'd say, in the last four years is probably when I've really kind of faced it head on and kind of dealt with it, rather than squashing it down and just being like, yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah. How
So
do you
yeah.
find facing things nowadays as opposed to when you were younger? Do you find it a lot easier to talk about things as well and play things face on, or do you still find it quite difficult because it's still like fairly fresh for you?
No, I do find it a lot easier to talk about my troubles now.
Mm.
And I think that I've learned through retraining and doing what I'm doing now, and also my own therapy. My thought process is slightly different. So I think talking actually is a lot easier than it ever has been. And I know that when I'm finding things a little bit difficult, like talking to my friends or talking to family, um, is a lot easier than it ever used to be. I definitely used to be the person that would just put a smile on and be like, yeah, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong. I'm absolutely fine.
Yeah. But congratulations, though. Honestly, really proud of you of what you achieved so far and where you are in life. So amazing. Well done. And you went to University of Bedfordshire, didn't you?
I did,
You
yeah, I
did.
did.
Yeah. How was your time there? Did you enjoy it?
Honestly, university was one of was the best 4 years ever. It was just magic,
Yeah.
because I was doing something that I loved every single day. I got to experience loads of different schools because of the placements that I was put on, and different experiences. And it almost secured the fact that actually, yeah, this is what I wanted to do. And it was during my time at uni where we did a lot of work on physical well-being, obviously, because that was part of the job, but it was looking at it was being educated about the holistic approach to PE that I'd never really thought about as
Mm.
like going through PE myself. And it wasn't until uni that we were kind of introduced to this concept. And that was something that I thought, yeah, I really want to bring that in when I qualify, and the first school that I work in, like I really want to have a bit more of a holistic approach to PE rather than it just being based around performance.
Mm.
But yeah, university was great. I absolutely loved uni. Like some of my best times are there, and some of my best friends are from uni. So
Oh, that's
yeah, it was
brilliant. I'm about to
brilliant.
ask actually as well if you still keep in contact with any of your friends from uni.
So yeah, yeah.
Brilliant. Are they still in education themselves, actually teaching as well, or completely different fields now?
Some of them are in different fields, but my closest friend is still in education. Yeah.
Ah, lovely. Ah, and obviously that brings us into Cheryl Claire Wellbeing in it. So you've been doing that for, is it 2 years now? One or two, 18 months, hasn't it? You've been doing it
Yeah,
for
it's been
now.
about 18 months.
18
Yeah.
months,
So
yeah.
I set the business up during the pandemic, which was obviously a brilliant time to start a new.
Yeah. Perfect.
Great timing. Um, but actually, it's kind of proven to be a really good time to launch, because post-pandemic is when people are calling out to me for some help. And I think almost um, the effects of the pandemic, but also being able to settle back into a routine.
Mm.
been quite demanding, especially for some children. Is, you know, quite a lot of adults have found it really difficult getting back into the office, or, you know, there's been a lot of anxiety around it. So yeah, although I set it up in quite a turbulent time, I think it's actually paid off.
Oh, 100% really has. And always, we mentioned earlier, you do so much with this well-being now as well. I mean, what are some of the kind of courses that you offer, and and for those that might not know about it just yet, would you be able to explain what you do with Cheryl Claire Wellbeing, just in case for those that might not know about it? Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you.
So I offer individual services. So I work one-to-one with children, as well as within schools. And then obviously I've got this offering coming in January as well, which will be released in January and on my website. But I basically look at well-being in general. So
Mm,
I cover all areas of well-being. So mental well-being, emotional well-being, physical well-being, social well-being, and kind of how all of those things encompass our overall health. So
mm,
if we're lacking in one area, then it can affect everything else. They kind of all have to be in balance for us to feel the best that we possibly can, and for us to thrive, if you like.
mm.
So yeah, so the one-to-one coaching that I do with children, teens, it works over 6 weeks. And yeah, I just kind of I'm there as a bit of a handhold person, I guess, and I get them to, through questioning and coaching rather than counselling as such, I kind of tackle their problems with them head on,
Mm.
and use a variety of different tools and modalities to kind of find out which is out of balance, what areas are out of balance, and some strategies that we can put in place to help them get back to being who they truly are, and you know, being the best that they possibly can be.
That's amazing. That is so good to hear. And obviously, you've offered both school and individual services, as you just mentioned there. What was the kind of first service that you put together and decided to choose from? Like you got so much, like you said a minute ago. What was the first thing you decided to put together and then put out there for work? That makes
So
sense.
the first
Yeah.
service that I did was, I worked at a nursery, and I did
Mm,
some mindfulness sessions at a nursery, and
yeah.
I did a 6-week block with preschool.
Wow.
And I just educated them like through practical fun, and really creative ways,
Yeah.
all about mindfulness and how it's really important to stay present, and like taught them some mindfulness techniques. So yeah, that was the first service, and I absolutely loved it. And I was like, yeah, this is 100% what I want to do. Like I just, the kids loved it. They were so engaged.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, after that, that's when I kind of like looked into launching like more one-to-one services. And quite in all honesty, quite a lot of the services that I now offer
Yeah.
have come off the back of people inquiring about whether I would be able to offer that service.
Oh, really?
um, yeah, so somebody got in touch with me about exam stress and anxiety, and it wasn't a
Mm.
bespoke package that I had already sort of on my website, but they asked me if I would be able to do a coaching session with their daughter to help her combat exam anxiety. I was like, yeah, I'm more than happy to.
Brilliant.
So now off the back of that, I now have an hour's exam busting coaching, which is one-to-one as well. So yeah, quite a lot of the work that I do offer as kind of come from people asking if I can offer that service. So
That's amazing. That is so good. And are there any kind of like services that you find are really popular, like really stand like I said, the exam busting right there? Is that like one of your most popular things? Do you reckon on your service?
yeah, so the exam busting coaching that I offer has definitely been one of the most popular. I just think that it's, no matter what age they are, like even from SATs, from year 6 SATs, there's a lot of anxiety and stress around that examination period, and like right the way through to like year 10 mocks, year 11 GCSEs, year 12 and 13 mocks and A levels. Um, so yeah, I think that's been like one of the most popular ones that I have, that I've that I've been working with, and also the 6-week block one-to-one coaching, that's been quite popular, just in terms of helping people kind of or helping children kind of get back to being a little bit more settled.
Brilliant. And what's the kind of youngest you work with actually as well? Is it like a youngest
So
age limit that you work with?
not really. I mean, I did the preschool mindfulness sessions, which were
Yeah.
brilliant. So they were all 4 and 5. Well, yeah, 4 and 5. Some of them were 3, but
Wow.
yeah, I don't think there's ever an age limit to start learning about well-being and how to look after yourself as a priority.
Yeah. Of course, 100%. And when you work with such like varied ages, I mean, are there a lot of similarities when you throughout the spectrum, or are they all completely different depending on what you're working on and who you're working with as well?
Yeah, I think no, I think there is quite a lot of variety in terms of like you said, I think it's very much dependent on what I'm working on and who I'm working with,
Mm,
as to kind of um what kind of tools and modalities that I would look into offering whoever it is that I'm working with.
yeah.
Um, there are some similarities in terms of quite a lot of the work that I focus on is around anxiety, and coping with anxiety and worry. Um, but the preschoolers were more, it was more general with them, and just kind of getting them to understand what mindfulness is and how we can use it and why it's important. Um, Whereas like when I work with some of the older ones that I've been working with, it's it's a bit more about different things, so like mindfulness, meditation,
Mm,
and different techniques to help us cope with anxiety and stress, because they have a better understanding of how anxiety and stress can make you feel. It's about relieving those symptoms.
mm. And do you tend to work with the teachers at the school as well to maybe like alter it slightly if you need to, or is it literally how you've prepared it already and you just bring it into schools as you need to?
I mean, I do offer wellbeing services for teachers, because I do think that is so hugely important, that well-being isn't just thought of as a tick box activity,
Of course.
which I think a lot of schools can fall into that trap. I think it's something that needs to be embedded within the culture of the school,
Yeah.
um, and not just, oh well, we need to be seen to be offering well-being, so we'll do vouchers for this, or we'll give you a half day off. Or I think it needs to be something that needs to be looked at a much wider perspective as to how well-being is being addressed in schools for teachers,
Mm,
and actually speaking to teachers and finding out what well-being means for them. Like how would they feel less stressed throughout the day? How would putting some things in place help them?
mm.
And I think the conversation needs to involve teachers um, as much as anyone else, really.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and obviously mental health is a lot more accepting now, but why do you think even nowadays it's still such a like a taboo thing to talk about, especially in schools where like you left teaching because of your mental health? Why is it such a hard thing to discuss between teachers and school and kids, do you think?
Um, I think it's I think it's due to there being so much pressure on having things to do, or having
Mm,
to have things done by a particular time, um, and there's specs that they have to make sure that they're hitting all of the specification for the examination subjects. There's assessment points, there's marking, there's deep dives, there's so much going on in schools that actually I think that it's almost like a bit of a British thing where you do just put a smile on and everything's okay. But
yeah.
um but yeah, I think that's probably why. I think it's a lot to do with the pressure of what teachers are put under, and also students as well, to make sure that they're getting the results that they require, because at the end of the day, that's what is that's what schools are looking for. They're looking for the results. And I'm not saying that's every school. I know there are thousands and thousands of schools out there um, that are not results driven at all.
Mm,
But at the end of the day, that's what that's what they're there for, if that makes sense.
Of course, yeah, 100%. And do you even think in the future that the schools will somehow adopt a similar approach in terms of maybe somehow reducing the workloads or reducing that micromanagement and steps of getting like results driven and stuff? Do you think would change eventually, or remain kind of
I
as it
can
is?
only hope.
Yeah, yeah, me
I can
too.
really only hope. I think there's so much scope into looking at how other countries use their education system. I mean, Sweden, and some of those other countries, their education system is completely different to ours. They
Mm,
still get really good results, but they're one of the happiest countries in the world.
yeah,
Um, and there doesn't seem to be as much stress around education as what there does in this country. So I think I think there is a lot of scope for actually looking further afield as to how we manage education in this country. But um, I'm very dubious as to whether it will change or not.
mm,
Unfortunately, I think it's
yeah,
always going to be exam driven, um, and it's always going to be test driven,
mm,
because that's kind of how things are done. And I think it's
exactly, yeah.
like it's always been done that way.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, I think it would take someone quite big and brave to actually break the mold and be like, no, we're going to absolutely radicalize the education system in this country. But I think even like the small things could help. And the fact that well-being is now part of an Ofsted inspection, which is ironic.
yeah.
um, um, and the fact that actually conversations around mental health in particular, mental well-being in particular, but conversations about well-being are much more accepted now, is a step in the right direction for sure. And there are a lot of schools out there who are now beginning to bring those roles in that are specifically for well-being officers, well-being leads. And I know that some schools are wanting to kind of radicalize their curriculum to ensure that well-being is cross-curricular and not just, oh, we're doing well-being today, and looking at how all subjects can focus on well-being, and it's not just a separate subject that has to be done, as like I said, as part of a tick box activity.
Yeah, for sure. And do you still do like physical exercise as well with the kids as well as part of your well-being?
Yeah, so I also I do quite a bit of work with some of the local sports clubs. So I one of the majors that I did at uni all those years ago was sports psychology, and sports psychology has always kind of been one of my specialisms.
Mm,
And quite a lot of mental well-being and coaching ties in quite neatly with sports psychology. So some of the work that I've done with some of the sports clubs has revolved around my mixed knowledge of sports psychology and mental well-being. So I've done a few workshops for local sports clubs, trying to improve performance through looking at the mental side of the game.
that's brilliant. And obviously you're doing such incredible work because of the testimonials that you're getting as well have been incredible. I mean, when you get such amazing feedback through the work that you do, how does that make you feel? You must feel so amazing after, though.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for the words that people send me, and the feedback that I get. Sometimes I kind of have to pinch myself a little bit, and I'm like, did I do that? Like, is that me? Is that who they're talking
That is
about?
you. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it does. Yeah, it just lights my heart up. And when I'm in the midst of delivering the workshop or working one-to-one, like I know that that's my path because it just fills my heart. It literally makes me glow.
Yeah.
So I know that that's kind of what I've been put on this planet to do.
That is such a brilliant way to say things. Like, I'm so proud of you as well, just to say that. And
Thank you.
it's a pleasure. And one more thing, actually, 'cause I always love to finish on a really positive note. I've got loads more questions, but I want to finish. I love to finish on a positive note. Is obviously you've been such an inspiration to so many kids now, young people. Have any of them actually taught you any lessons during your time during Cheryl Claire Wellbeing? Like, it taught you anything, like any like brilliant lessons yourself. Like, I didn't think of that. That's brilliant. I love that. Things you can
Yeah,
take away.
I think there's always scope for learning from others. Like, I think you have to be quite arrogant to go into a situation thinking that you know best and that your mind's never going to be changed. And I think whenever especially working with children, they just view the world in a completely different way, especially youngsters. And they're so innocent that sometimes, they come up with things and I'm like, "Oh, I've never thought of it that way. Like,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that with me." And they're opening my mind up, and then it makes me question the next time that I do this with another young person, I've got their perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah, 100%. I learn all the time when I'm working with children, because they open your eyes up into a new way of thinking.
They really do. I mean, I was going to ask actually if they've kind of helped you kind of prepare more for your other services because you've learned so much for the kids themselves.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the services that I offer are always going to be ever evolving. There's no fixed way of doing what I do. So if when working with a young person, and I do part of the coaching that I've always done, and then they kind of come back and say, well, actually, have you thought about this? Or I think this. That's a way for me to improve my services. So yeah, definitely.
I love that. And what do you feel? What's your kind of ultimate goal now? Do you feel you got your big project coming in January, which is amazing? What do you feel like your ultimate goal now is in general? Like, is it get into as many schools as possible, to help as many kids as possible? Is it have like a whole team of people
Exactly
to work
that.
with it? Yeah, love
Yeah,
that.
100%. And I think that, as getting into as many schools as possible, helping as many children as possible understand that, also a lot of the time, that they're not alone.
Yeah,
And the way that they're feeling is completely normal. When I did the last exam busting one-to-one coaching that I did, with this girl, I got her, the first thing that I get them to do is think about why do they feel anxious about exams, what is it about the
mm,
exam that they feel anxious about. And she wrote all these things down, and I said, you won't be the only one that feels that. And she felt really isolated, and just me saying to her, you aren't alone in the way that you feel. I can guarantee you, if I went into your year tomorrow and asked people to put their hands up if they felt this way, you'd look around and, most of the people in there would probably feel exactly the same. So I think it's also educating kids that the way that they feel is completely normal, and that they're not alone in the way that they do feel. I think that's also part of the goal of mine as well, is to make sure that they don't feel alone in their journey.
yeah, for sure. 100%. I couldn't agree more. And I think that is the most perfect way to finish the podcast. But Cheryl, I want to say thank you so much for being a part of it. Honestly, I've really loved it. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for
Thank you.
having me. I've
My pleasure.
enjoyed chatting to you.
Thank you too. And how can people find you just in case, actually?
I'm on Instagram, Cheryl_Claire_Wellbeing. I'm on Facebook, Cheryl Claire Wellbeing, and I'm also on LinkedIn.
Brilliant.
Um, and I've got a website, so just Google me and I'll pop up.
Lovely. And I'll leave links below as well for sure. But once
Fab.
again, Cheryl, thank you so much for everything. Really loved it. Thank you.
More than welcome.
And take care, everyone. Bye bye.